Part 15. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 141. In short, muscles are invincible, Neiman concluded in the end. Orgrim smiled and did not comment on anything. It is a good thing to have this confidence. Moreover, this ability is indeed very strong, and there are too many areas for development. Let's chat again. After some time, the Sphinx took out a newspaper and said, "By the way, Orgrim, we are actually here to deliver the newspaper to you." Sphinx is a runaway little Lolita. Although she is quite crazy, it may be because of Neiman's relationship. From the beginning, she has had a particularly good attitude towards Orgrim and others. Now, she can completely treat her as her own. As long as Orgrim doesn't go against Shiki, she will probably stand by Orgrim. Under normal circumstances, Orgrim treats Shiki as his thigh and has no intention of following him at all. He means to do the right thing. So there is no conflict between the two. As for the other one, Katerina Dupin, she does not have a deep relationship or bond with Shiji. At this time, it seems that they have already called himself a member of the Warhammer Pirates. Of course, Orgrim welcomed this. Their Warhammer Pirates have now joined Shiki's banner. But among the members of this group, they can really take on the battle. In fact, there are only 3 people with the title of member: Orgrim, Beckman, and Mihawk. Now, Neiman, Sphinx, and Katerina Dupin can be added. These 3 people among them, Neiman's strength is not particularly outstanding, and she is still in the development stage. Sphinx is not a person with abilities, and her physical fitness is average, but she is good at using powerful firepower, and her mentality is crazy. It caused a lot of damage. Therefore, the bounty is relatively high, 260 million, which is very powerful overall. There will also be a lot of room for growth in the future. As for Katerina Dupin, this ugly woman, it's really powerful. The ability of the animal-type fantasy beast is so strong that it is no weaker than that bloody lion Rengar. She is currently the strongest among the 3 women. She can also keep up with Og. The existence of the 3 main forces including Reem. It can also be seen from this. It has not been long since joining Shiji's banner. The power in Orgrim's hands has increased a lot in the future. If Shiji really takes over now that Ji has taken over, the Warhammer Pirates will definitely become even stronger. Why did you suddenly think of delivering me a newspaper? Did something happen? Orgrim took the newspaper and asked with a smile. Well, Boss Shiji asked us to ask you if you were interested in this guy in the newspaper last night, but you seemed to be practicing last night, so we didn't disturb you and came early today. The Sphinx nodded and said. Orgrim opened the newspaper and took a look at it curiously, and then looked a little surprised. Douglas Barrett, Orgrim whispered softly. The news reported in this newspaper was none other than Barrett. He had a battle with Crocodile in the New World, but the 2 sides could not decide the winner. Judging from the timeline, Barrett should have joined the Roger Pirates by now, but I have made some adjustments here to facilitate the plot. Moreover, Barrett can arrive in Roger during Roger's time. He was so powerful that he ended up in a tie with newcomer Lao Sha. It's a bit abrupt. I'm going to put his fight with Lao Sha before he joins the Roger Pirates, which seems a little more reasonable. Sand Crocodile. Crocodile has been arrogant in the New World for some time. As a natural type sand fruit ability user, Crocodile undoubtedly has very good power, and his upper limit is very high. As for Douglas Barrett, this guy is also relatively famous in the New World. He is not a pirate now, but a war criminal who is strongly wanted by the world government. Jartberg massacre, he really has the demeanor of this guy. Orgrim whispered softly. The newspaper said that a week ago, Douglas Barrett once again committed a felony in the New World. He slaughtered the entire Jartberg Island alone and destroyed everything on the island. All were wiped out. More than 40,000 people were killed in this massacre. It must be said that Douglas Barrett was really a ruthless guy. and after massacring the entire Jalsberg, Douglas Barrett and Crocodile encountered each other, and then the two sides fought fiercely. For 3 days and 3 nights, there was no winner. Before the Navy arrived, the two ran away separately. I don't know what the situation was, but Crocodile was in New Zealand. Although he is very active in the world, he rarely goes against the world government. With his current strength, he can easily put a bounty of over 100 million, but the world government and the Navy have only given Crocodile a bounty of over 60 million so far. Gold. Orgrim couldn't figure out the reason for this, and he didn't think about it anymore. Anyway, even when Crocodile became the king of the Shichibukai, the bounty was only 81 million. It is a combination of strength and bounty. A boss who is completely unfit for gold. On the other hand, he was able to fight Douglas Barrett for 3 days and 3 nights with no outcome, and the bounty on his head was now as high as 1.1 billion belly. Orgrim was not surprised by this. Yes, first of all, this guy is not a pirate, but he can have such a high bounty, which has proven his strength. Secondly, looking at the news in the newspaper, I feel that this guy is worth 1.1 billion belly, and he can make a big deal if he does it casually. Massacre, more than 40,000 lives were ignored. This level of danger cannot be overestimated by the world government. Perhaps the bounty is exaggerated in terms of strength, but it is absolutely reasonable. Well, this is not the first time he has caused massacre. A few years ago, he destroyed his own country and army and was called a war criminal. It seems, he is like a wild beast swimming aimlessly on the sea, tearing apart everything he encounters. Sphinx said with a smile on her lips. Yes, a rampaging beast. Orgrim nodded and murmured softly. Barrett in this state finally returned to normal after meeting Roger, but within 2 years, Roger was about to die. Barrett once again he fell into a state of rage. After Roger really died, Barrett continued to rage on the sea, and was finally terminated by the world government with the demon-slaying order. There is nothing to say about what happened next, boss. You have to go to Impelton for further studies, otherwise it will seem like you are lacking something. So Boss Shiji likes him? Orgrim looked up at the Sphinx and asked. I can only say that I am a little interested. Boss Shiji asked us to ask you what you think. If you are interested, you can contact him and see if he is willing to come to our Golden Lion Fleet, Sphinx said with a smile. Orgrim curled his lips, waved his hand and said, I have no interest in him at all at the moment. What I need now is to strengthen my strength. Although I am not weak anymore, I'm not strong at all. I'll talk about it later when I have the chance. In the vast sea, trying to find a guy like this alone is completely a matter of luck. If Orgrim really takes over this job, I don't know how long it will take to find him. A year and a half is not impossible. How can he have the time now? And even if he finds it, this guy may not join, okay. Unless Orgrim has extremely strong strength and can convince him and become the target he wants to chase, just like Roger. But now, Orgrim is really not that powerful. It's hard to say whether he can beat Douglas Barrett. Thinking of this, Orgrim became very curious about Crocodile again. This guy, before meeting Luffy, the cheating player, it was a 50-50 split in the world of pirates. Damn it, he seems to be able to fight anyone, and yet he can't beat anyone. It's really weird. Yeah? I thought you would be very interested. The Sphinx smacked her lips in boredom upon hearing this. Then she said, are you too boring? I've been here for almost a month, and I'm not doing anything, just studying these boring things. Shall we go to sea? Looking for trouble for others, Whitebeard. Roger. Revenge for Boss Shiji. I still want to live for 2 more years. Don't be blindly arrogant until you have enough strength, okay? Sphinx, you should also study how to make yourself stronger, right? Orgrim said with a smile. Sphinx said with some dissatisfaction, firepower is everything, but I often pay attention to the black market. I haven't encountered anything that can enhance my strength recently, and my physical fitness is not that good. I am a weak woman. It's good to be as good as I am now. In the future, it depends on whether I can encounter any powerful devil fruits to supplement my strength. That's a shortcoming, ha ha ha. Flowers and more are provided, come on, bosses, ravage me, I'm not happy enough. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 142. The climate on Shiji's island is very normal and will change with the seasons. In the New World, this phenomenon is very rare. Since coming to Shiji's banner, Orgrim has almost never left this island, and a full year has passed. Shiji is not idle. From time to time he will go out to kill some second-rate pirates to strengthen his own strength and so on. Occasionally, when Orgrim wanted to verify something, he would go out with Shiji to play in the autumn breeze to show his sense of existence. However, the number of times is very few. Over the past year, Orgrim's strength has grown rapidly, and at the same time, he has learned more about Shiji's power. It is undeniable that Shiji is very good as a pirate, and his development is also very fast. Ambitious, planned, and capable, quite good. But in Orgrim's view, if he wanted to conquer the world, the route he would take was still a bit strange. In other words, Shiji's route is a hegemonic route, towering over all living beings and occupying the top of the world. As long as he can achieve this goal, that's all. He doesn't seem to have thought about what will happen next. Therefore, Shiji's power is still the pirate's power to this day. He did not intend to establish an orderly system or political power. According to Orgrim's recent knowledge, if this method is successful, there will naturally be nothing to say while Shiji is alive. But if he dies, everything will disappear. But Orgrim was not prepared to let Shiji change anything. After all, as a pirate, it was normal to have such thoughts. Who among serious pirates would want to establish an orderly order and rule the entire world for a long time? Is that what a pirate is supposed to do? It would be great to imitate Charlotte Lingling and create a pirate nation. Of course, although he had no intention of changing Shiki's mind, Orgrim did not approve of many of his current practices. It's just that nothing can be changed about these things now. After all, Orgrim is just Shiji's disciple now. Shiji is the boss of the entire Flying Pirates and the entire Golden Lion fleet. His will is the will that everyone needs to implement. But Orgrim is not in a hurry. He will make changes when Shiji goes to Impelton for further training and he takes over. The weather has been a bit cold recently, and there have been several heavy snowfalls. Orgrim's courtyard was covered with a layer of white snow. He didn't clean it or ask anyone to take care of it. On the contrary, he seemed to like this feeling very much. Compared with a year ago, Orgrim's figure was stronger. In the cold winter, he only wore a pair of black trousers with a cloth belt casually tied around his waist. The upper body was naked and the muscles were tight. It seemed that the slightly swollen muscles had gradually been digested. He obviously felt stronger than before, but he looked like he had lost a little weight. The black hair was still slightly messy, as if it had been cut short at random. The cheeks that were still a little tender at first are now completely mature, looking like a young man in his mid-20s. In fact, Orgrim was almost 19 years old. In the center of the courtyard, Orgrim was standing on his head in the snow with one hand, one finger on the ground, and then he kept falling and rising again. He was practicing his finger gun. 1 year was enough for Orgrim to master all 6 styles of the Navy. But the practice of this kind of physical skills has always been sustained. Therefore, over the past year, he has never given up on this kind of practice, and even found that as he gradually developed his body, his self-healing ability, strength, and even domineering were steadily increasing. After simply doing 1,001 finger push UPS, Orgrim's warm-up was complete. There was not even any sweat on the body, but in the cold wind, there was a little white smoke rising from the head. Standing firm on the ground, Orgrim took a deep breath, and then whispered iron. As soon as the words fell, Orgrim's body froze in the cold wind, and his whole body turned into the iron block. Orgrim's mastery of iron blocks has reached an extremely high level in the past year. After testing, he has been able to use a simple iron block to withstand close-range artillery attacks without any damage. But this is not enough. Orgrim knows that his physical fitness is extremely strong and he can effectively heal himself, but his defense is indeed not enough. After fighting against strong men several times, he will be severely injured after his armed domineering energy breaks down. He needs to continuously enhance his defense power. There is nothing to say about his armed domineering power. As time goes by, he has become much stronger now. As for the other method, Orgrim chose iron blocks. In Orgrim's vision, in the future, the iron block will need to cooperate with the armed haki, and it will also need to develop its own ability to absorb this impact. The three elements come together to form your own powerful defense system. However, the disadvantages of the iron block are also obvious. When exerting this kind of power, you cannot move. Orgrim is deeply inconvenienced by this. He is currently practicing how to move freely in the state of the iron block. And his mentor happens to be Niemann, that little girl. Feeling his stiff and solid muscles, Orgrim's consciousness continued to sink into his body, and then he wanted to forcefully take action in the iron state. How can I describe this feeling? It's just aggrieved, there is a feeling of breaking free from constraints and shackles. And this kind of restraint and shackles are imposed on oneself by oneself, which is tantamount to using one's own strength against oneself, just like the left hand wrestling with the right hand. It's very uncomfortable, and no one can break it. And Orgrim wants to find a critical point in this state, which can keep the iron block running and move freely. His eyes were closed tightly, and the muscles in his body that were originally tense seemed to be moving again, and his chest muscles were beating faintly. Just when he was about to break through the limits of his muscles, Orgrim's face suddenly turned pale, and then a stream of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Cough, the aura on Orgrim's body was confused, and then he spat out a mouthful of blood. Still not working, even if the muscles on the surface can break through, the internal organs will be strongly repelled and cause internal injuries. Orgrim stretched out his hand to wipe the corners of his mouth and murmured. Judging from his very natural movements, this is not the first time that he has tortured himself like this. Thanks to his very strong physical fitness, this kind of injury can be fully recovered in a short time. At the same time, he also figured out why CP-9 is known as the strongest genius in 800 years. Rob Lucci is also unable to move freely in the state of an iron block. Because this is not an ordinary difficulty, it is extremely difficult. That werewolf Gabber didn't know what kind of luck he had to achieve this. Just when Orgrim was thinking about these questions, his brows suddenly raised. Then, he exerted force on his feet, and his figure instantly disappeared from the place, and suddenly appeared on the snow on the other side. There were no traces of footsteps left on the entire ground. This was one of the 6 moves, the shave step, which allowed people to move instantly within a short distance. Of course, this is just a technique to break through the speed limit, not a real spatial displacement. Theoretically speaking, it's a cover-up. As soon as Orgrim's figure appeared, a gunshot fell, and a bullet passed through the position where Orgrim was just now. Well, it's very good. The practice of seeing, hearing, and being domineering makes it even more powerful, Beckman said with a smile. I saw this guy standing at the door of the courtyard, leaning against the wall of the courtyard, holding an exquisite short-term musket in his hand, with a calm smile on his face. Seriously, is this how you greet me now? How many times has this happened? They attack me like this every time. What if I get shot accidentally? Orgrim cursed and said. Ha 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 ha, I didn't aim for the head. With your physical condition, it would be fine even if you were shot. Although this approach is somewhat inappropriate, you have to admit that it is indeed beneficial to your practice of seeing, hearing, and color, right? Beckman said with a smile. Before Orgrim could speak, Beckman raised his hand and fired again. This time, Orgrim really didn't react with the domineering power of seeing and hearing, and in a hurry, he instantly opened the iron gun. Block, then my chest felt slightly numb, and an angry expression appeared on my face. You bastard, if I hadn't opened the iron block, I would have been injured. It would have been endless, right? Orgrim cursed. But as he spoke, he felt a little dizzy, and then his expression changed, as if he thought of something. He lowered his head and looked, and sure enough, the place where he had just been shot on his chest was left. A trace of purple. I'll punch your lungs out, but you put poison in the bullet. Orgrim's feet softened and he almost fell to the ground. Ha 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 ha, no, it's not the poison in the bullet, but the poison I shot out. This gun has no bullets. Beckman said with a laugh. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 143. Over the past year, Orgrim is not the only one making progress. Beckman is also making progress. He learned a lot of new knowledge from Shiji's library. And use this knowledge to reorganize your strength system. In the past, Beckman, like Orgrim, was born in the wild. He had no one to teach him and no resources. You have to figure everything out on your own. But things are different now. Beckman has absorbed a lot of knowledge. With his IQ, he doesn't need any special teaching from others. He occasionally has questions that he doesn't know, and he can just ask Shiji and Shiji will answer them for him. That's enough for him. The development of poisonous fruits is the focus of Beckman's research. Before this, Beckman's development of poisonous fruits was very crude. Every time he raised his hand, he would get a poisonous mist, or he would create a poisonous dragon, a poisonous giant, or something like that. As long as the volume keeps up, that's fine. But now, it is obvious that Beckman's poisonous fruits have become more sophisticated. Judging from Orgrim's poison resistance, ordinary poisons would not cause any serious harm to Orgrim, but after taking a poison bullet from Beckman, he felt a little numb. It can be imagined that Beckman has completely purified the toxins and condensed the essence. In terms of physical fitness, Beckman is completely incomparable to Orgrim. He also practiced the sixth form of the Navy. You have to say that although the Navy seems a bit messy, it is indeed quite practical. How can the essence compiled by Navy bosses from past generations be so simple? However, Beckman was not as comprehensively developed as Orgrim. He focused on practicing moon steps, shave steps, finger guns, iron blocks, etc., which were not flexible enough and did not match his fighting ideas, so he just gave it a try. Orgrim's face turned blue and purple for a while, and the poison resistance in his body was fighting fiercely against Beckman's toxin. What kind of poison are you doing? Bravo! My poison resistance is obviously very strong, but now Orgrim asked with a somewhat embarrassed expression. Don't underestimate the bullets condensed from these toxins. With my current strength, I can only shoot 10 of these bullets. Each shot is the essence of my poisonous fruit. Once it hits the target, it contains the toxin is enough to kill Neptune species within 3 minutes, Beckman said as he walked to Orgrim's side. Then he reached out and slapped Orgrim on the chest. The purple poison was quickly extracted from Orgrim's body and returned to Beckman's body. Your uncle's toxin is capable of poisoning the Neptune species, and you just hit me with it. After Orgrim returned to normal, he cursed with great dissatisfaction. I'm not here? You can't die. Beckman said with a smile. Before Orgrim could speak, Beckman showed off his exquisite short-term musket and asked how is it, Beautiful, right? This gun is indeed very beautiful. The dark barrel has a mysterious gold-plated pattern. The wooden handle is even more exquisite. There is also a lavender poisonous dragon carved on it. It's really good. Where did you get it? Orgrim smacked his lips and asked. What did that happen? I made this myself, and it took me a lot of effort. Ordinary muskets can't shoot out my poison. This gun, which I customized for myself, can only shoot out poison bullets. Beckman raised his eyebrows and said. You really have enough time, Orgrim smiled and said. Beckman used to like to mess with these things. The narwhal crossbow on Orgrim's ship was Beckman's masterpiece. You are wrong. I am doing this to enhance my own strength, not to be bored. Just like you did just now, generally more powerful masters will look down on bullets, and this mentality is what I opportunity. Many people wouldn't dodge such bullets, would they? Beckman said with a confident smile. Makes sense. Orgrim touched his chin and said. Take the unexpected. Beckman grinned, paused for a moment, and then continued. Although my poisonous fruit is powerful, it has a lot of movement. Once the top masters are prepared to guard against it, it will be difficult to really bring fatal consequences to them hurt, so I changed my mind. In short, it's just Lao Yin Bai. Orgrim joked. Don't worry about the means, just be effective. Fighting requires brains. Do you think everyone is as reckless as you? Beckman spat. Then the two brothers chatted for a while, and then Orgrim asked, where is that guy Mihawk? Isn't he back yet? No, but I contacted him using a phone bug 2 days ago. Where do you think he is now? Beckman asked with a smile. About half a year ago, Mihawk felt that his strength might have a breakthrough, and he had the idea of challenging the world's swordsman again. Therefore, he temporarily stayed with Orgrim and others. Farewell, ready to go to sea to temper himself. Regarding Mihawk's ideas, Orgrim did not block anything at all. Everyone has their own ways and ideas of becoming stronger. Orgrim is willing to stay at home and be an otaku under Shiji. It is reasonable for Mihawk to go out and challenge the swordsman. There is no need to stop anything. As for Shiji, when he heard that Mihawk was leaving temporarily, he was so happy that he almost jumped up, and a special arrangement was arranged for him. The outstanding sailors of the 100 numbers also gave him a small sailboat and personally sent him to the sea before returning. I heard that Shiji got drunk alone that night. There was no way, this guy Mihawk had nothing to do with it. For Shiji, it is simply a nightmare. Although Orgrim occasionally goes to Shiji for discussion, the frequency is not high, and Shiji is completely acceptable. But this guy Mihawk, almost every day I almost annoyed Shiji to death. If he didn't see that this bastard really made some progress every time, Shiji wouldn't want to talk to him. I finally gave away this brown candy. Can Shiji be unhappy? Go to the sea and harm others. Orgrim asked curiously, where is it? East China Sea, Beckman said with a smile. East China Sea? What was he doing in the East China Sea? Orgrim asked in surprise. Among the 4 sea areas, the East China Sea is called the weakest sea because no big pirates seem to have appeared in the sea area, and this has lasted for a long time. In fact, there are a lot of misunderstandings here. For example, Roger was born in the East China Sea, but after Roger, there really weren't any powerful guys. As for Lieutenant General Garp of the Navy, needless to say, he was from the Navy. It is not included in the sequence. Theoretically speaking, the East China Sea is looked down upon by everyone, and they feel that there are no masters there. But in the eyes of the Navy and the world government, the East China Sea is a peaceful sea area governed by them, and it is a benchmark for the world, and they are proud of it. Who knows? Beckman waved his hand and said. Did he say when he would be back? Orgrim asked. Just as I was about to tell you, he said that his trip this time will probably take a long time, and he may not come back within a year or two, so he asked me to say hello to you to avoid misunderstanding. Beckman shook his head and said. After a slight pause, Beckman added, of course, if there is any emergency, he said you can notify him at any time. Okay, anyway, we don't have anything to do in a short period of time. If he wants to travel, he can travel. I won't misunderstand him. Orgrim said with a smile. My hawk is still very trustworthy and has high integrity. From the time on the Shampoo Islands, Orgrim has completely regarded him as his good partner. No maybe to doubt him or something. Well, let me tell you some exciting news. A few days ago, the Roger Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates had a fierce battle in the New World. It seems that Roger stole one of Whitebeard's crew members. It's that Kojiki Odin, Beckman said with a smile. Oh? And this thing? Was it in the newspaper? Orgrim asked with a flash of light in his eyes. No, it's intelligence, not newspapers. Beckman shook his head and said. Orgrim also had some clarity at this time. There is no doubt that Roger got Kojiki Odin, but he didn't steal it. This may be a problem in the intelligence. Now that he is able to interpret the text of history. Next, as long as he finds the text of the road sign and history, Raftru will appear in the world's cognition. The big time is coming soon, Orgrim whispered softly. What's the meaning? Beckman frowned and asked a little strangely. Ha 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 ha, it's nothing, just wait and see. Orgrim laughed and waved his hands without saying anything else. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 144. The first half of the Grand Line, Marine Headquarters Marineford. In the Navy's Senior General's Conference Room. At this time, a group of Navy bosses were sitting inside, seeming to be discussing some issue. Are you kidding me? If this plan continues to be implemented, how can our Navy have the face to claim to be just? Sakaski asked angrily, holding a cigar in his mouth. This is not justice at all. Sakaski is right. Once this kind of thing and this kind of plan are implemented and made public, what face will our Navy have? How dare you claim to be righteous? Admiral Zifa also said with a dark face and a very angry look. It was not just Sakaski's bad temper who was questioning, General Zifa was angry. In fact, at this moment, the Navy sitting here, none of the big bosses had a good-looking face. They all had expressions of irritation and suppressing their anger. Even the warring states generals were like this, sitting there with a dark face, in a very unhappy mood. Marshal of the Navy, the cyborg boss, sighed a little when he saw this, then he looked at warring states, raised his eyebrows slightly, and asked him to speak quickly and rhythmically. After the warring states general noticed that Marshal Cyborg was giving him a wink, his expression was also indescribably uncomfortable. At this time, big brother, you let me come out to set the pace? Aren't you pushing me into a pit of fire? Moreover, I, Sengoku, also oppose this plan issued by the world government, okay? Therefore, the warring states general winked at Marshal Steele again, shook his head, and whispered, if I don't stand up, if I stand up now, I won't be scolded to death? And, what kind of bullshit plan is this? Marshal Cyborg tilted his head slightly when he saw this, and whispered to General Sengoku, Sengoku, you have to understand the identity of our Navy and the position of the world government. Do you think I would approve of such a plan? But when the orders from above come down, how can we object? Then Marshal, come and speak. I don't want to speak. The warring states general was silent for a while and then whispered. At this time, they were whispering to each other, but no one paid attention. The other Navy bosses were still expressing their opinions and complaints. Warring states period, this is an opportunity for you to show off. Do you still want to be a marshal? Cyborg asked angrily. If this can make me a marshal, I don't want to, the warring states general said without hesitation. Marshal Cyborg fell silent when he heard this. Yes, Any navy with backbone and sense of justice will not give in to this, right? Use this method to be promoted to marshal. Capital is inherently shameful. This time and that time, the warring states period, although you have anger in your chest, you should also understand, in many cases, if you only insist on justice, you won't be able to get things done, Marshal Cyborg said helplessly. Listening to Marshal Cyborg's slightly feeble words, Warring States' expression became slightly tangled. Of course he understood that if anything happened, he could rely on his sense of justice to get over it. That morning it's all peaceful. As the saying goes, those who achieve great things don't stick to trivial matters. The higher they stand, the more they will sometimes do things that embarrass themselves and go against their own wishes. This is the so-called big picture view. But to be honest, warring states would rather not have such a big picture view at this time. Suddenly, he was a little envious of Garp, a bastard. As a lieutenant general, sometimes he does not have to shoulder the responsibilities of a general. And this kind of responsibility, sometimes, it really makes warring states feel very frustrated and uncomfortable. Of course, it can be said that besides him, warring states, isn't there also the General Sci-fi? But in fact, Sci-fi has already begun to prepare to apply for retirement, but no one can fill his hole, so he has been dragged away. Otherwise Sci-fi would have gone to be the principal of the Navy's military academy, and he would not have the leisure to be a general. Therefore, he will not care about this. If you look at if I don't like it, just ask me to retire. Sci-fi can retire, but warring states cannot. Moreover, warring states has a very sense of responsibility and his own ideas. He is determined to be a naval marshal. Cyborg the marshal saw that the warring states general was silent, and he did not urge anything, nor did he speak. After a long time, the warring states general's expression first became ferocious, then became entangled, then a little gloomy, and finally, but he let out a long sigh, feeling a little tired. Picking up the teacup on the table and taking a sip, the warring states general moistened his throat a little and said with a stiff expression, "Everyone." As soon as he opened his mouth, everyone's eyes were on him, which made warring states feel even more pressure. But at this moment, warring states had to withstand this pressure and said with a very ugly face, "I know that this kind of thing is an insult to our navy and a trampling on justice. We really have no control over the new world, isn't it? Do you have to give up because of this?" Sakaski asked very forcefully. No, the warring states general shook his head first, then smiled bitterly, looked at the senior navy generals and said, "This year's military expenditures have not been paid out yet." The warring states general suddenly made such a digression, which seemed very unreasonable. But after he finished speaking, the entire conference room fell silent. The expressions of all the senior navy generals were as if they were hesitant to speak, saying how aggrieved they were, how aggrieved they were. Garp's expression was so gloomy that he could drip water. General Sci-fi also looked unwilling, but he understood the difficulties of the warring states period. Jun sat next to Chief Staff Officer Ihe. Looking at these senior generals of the Navy, he felt very complicated in his heart. Everyone present was a powerful figure on the sea, including Jun herself. It can be said that if so many big guys stamp their feet together, the sea will tremble. But even such big shots all looked aggrieved at this moment, looking like they were unable to use their strength. This scene reminded Jun of Darag. The justice of the Navy has its limits, justice also changes with the passage of time, Jun thought in her heart. Suddenly, she seemed to understand why this guy Darag was so determined to leave the Navy. Because even the Navy, known as the base camp of justice, cannot accommodate them at some point. The justice in my heart. For example now. Seeing everyone's silence, the warring states general said the draft of the His Majesty's Shishibukai plan issued by the world government is a political order, the Navy does not have the power to deny. At the World Conference in 2 months, this proposal will be officially given a legal definition. Before that, All we have to do is to improve this policy as much as possible, so that it appears, it is relatively less evil and strives for more interests of our navy. After a short pause, the Warring States General looked at the silent naval admirals, smiled bitterly, and continued then, the next discussion will focus on this theme. Yes, the reason why so many Navy bosses are angry and annoyed is because the world government suddenly issued a decree on pirates to the Navy. That is the draft of the King's Shishibukai plan. The Navy is required to improve this draft based on the actual situation and formally pass it at the World Conference in 2 months. It has to be said that this draft of the Shishibukai under the King about pirates is simply the kind that throws the justice of the Navy to the ground and then poops on it. It was also the kind of beating that made the Navy's face swell and bleed. Because this decree emphasizes a concept that has never been seen before, that is, legalized pirates. The main content is that due to the Navy's loss of control over the New World, many franchise countries in the New World have been marginalized and other related reasons. The world government had to use another method and power to strengthen its control over the New World and restrict the joining countries. Therefore, the world government decided to recruit 7 great pirates with sufficient reputation and strength to recruit them. Let them become the King's Shishibukai to curb the development of pirate power, infiltrate the New World, and so on. To put it simply, it is thief against thief. The pirate camp was divided into 2 major forces, one of which was organized under the banner of the world government. At least in theory, the world government's Shishibukai draft can indeed effectively enhance the power of the world government in a short period of time and deal a powerful blow to the pirates in the New World. But there are many potential factors here, which are simply outrageous. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 145. As we all know, what kind of existence are pirates? They burned, looted, and committed all kinds of evil, causing chaos in the sea and making life worse for countless innocent people. It can be said that no one flying the pirate flag is a good thing. Don't talk about Shanks and the Straw Hat Pirates in the future. It seems that they will not do any evil things, and they have also done some good things. But at the end of the day, pirates are pirates. One of the most fundamental sins of pirates is that they do not engage in production, but rely on plunder for everything. Even the Straw Hat Pirates are the same. Just imagine, if the sea was full of pirates, what would the world look like? No one will produce anything, everything will return to chaos, everyone will drink blood from their hair, and civilization will regress, which is the inevitable result. This is why most people hate pirates so much. Because the pirates can easily obtain the things they worked hard to create, the food they grew, etc. with their barbaric methods. They are nothing but moths, there is no doubt about it. And now, the world government actually asked the Navy to create some kind of King Shishibukai. Legalize the 7 pirates and become a force for world government. And the legalization of this pirate does not mean that he came ashore with a clean conscience and stopped being a pirate. If this were simply the case, the Navy might be able to reluctantly accept it. In fact, it is not that the Navy has never absorbed the power of pirates. For example, Tina's future hypnotist, Zango, was a pirate before. This kid Kabe, theoretically speaking, is also a guy with a pirate background. But what is the request of the King Shishibukai now? To give the pirates the right to legally plunder, they only need to pay a certain amount of money to the world government every year. In other words, from now on, these great pirates will only need to wear the cloak of the King's Shishibukai. Although they can still burn, kill, loot, and commit all kinds of evil, they no longer have to bear the responsibility behind them, and the Navy cannot arrest them for this. Isn't this outrageous enough? Without the restraint of the Navy, it is possible for these 7 great pirates to commit any heinous crimes. And these are so-called legal. What do you think of the justice of the Navy? That's right, it's bullshit. Of course, this is just the Navy's view. In the eyes of the world government, these don't matter. It is enough that the king's Shishibukai plan can stabilize his interests. Whatever is just or unjust, it can be used as a flag when needed. When you don't need it, just leave it aside to gather dust. In the world government's thinking, the king's Shishibukai is like a disguised franchising country. They are burning, killing and looting outside, treating it as a war between the franchised countries. This is normal. The franchised countries under the world government are fighting against each other for more than a day or two. Then the king's Shishibukai pays a certain amount of money to their world government every year, which is equivalent to the heavenly gold of the franchised countries. It doesn't seem to be any different. But that's just what it looks like. After all, no matter how hard the franchise countries go, they still have to produce and create value. But the Kaiwohei under the king will not, they do not produce, they only plunder. At least that's how the Navy sees it legally. But later on, in fact, whether it was Doflamingo, Crocodile, or Boya Hancock, they still produced some creative value. Especially Doflamingo and Boya Hancock, they are the true kings of a country. The stagnant economy of Dressrosa was revitalized by Doflamingo, but his method was very dark. But what country doesn't have darkness? Amazon Lily, the same is true. But these are all things for later. Doflamingo has not yet become a pirate, and Boya Hancock is just a little Lolita. Looking at the sea now, there is not a single good person who can qualify to become the king's Shishibukai, okay. Can the Navy not be worried? None of the many generals in the Navy expressed support for this proposal. But now, they are also in a dilemma. After all, the Navy is not an independent institution. It can arrange their justice however they want. As the top overlord on the sea, the Navy has millions of troops under its command, full of talents and experts. It looks glamorous, but behind the scenes, isn't it carrying a lot of pressure? Although they are strong, they cannot rob like pirates. As a purely violent organization and professional soldiers, the Navy must also be out of work, otherwise it will not be able to maintain sufficient combat effectiveness. Therefore, they need a very large supply organization behind them to support their Navy. This institution is, without a doubt, the world government. The world government is blocking the lifeline of the Navy. Even your millions of troops have to eat. If you don't obey, the world government will directly block the military expenditure of your Navy, and you won't even be able to eat. How can you talk about justice? For more than 800 years, the world government's control over the Navy can be said to be deeply ingrained, especially in matters such as military expenditures. Many times, the world government will order the Navy to do some unjust things, and the Navy has to swallow this breath for the so-called big picture. If you don't swallow it, there will be no food. It's so cruel and it's so simple. So at this moment, even all the senior Navy generals have objections to the draft of the King's Shishibukai plan issued by the world government. But the Warring States General only mentioned the military expenditures that the Navy has not yet released this year. Everyone was dumbfounded. After all, what's the use of having more objections? Without money and military spending, the Navy can't survive. If it wants to survive, it must listen to the world government. Of course, it is not impossible for the Navy to have a confrontation with the world government. But the final result is that both sides will suffer losses, the Navy may decline directly to the bottom, and the world government will also lose the power to control the sea. In this case, who laughs the happiest person on the sea? Of course it's the pirates. The Navy is considered a person with a moral bottom line, so naturally he does not want to see this scene. After all, no matter how dark the world government is, it still represents order and can allow people to survive. If it is replaced by pirates to rule the world, then what the hell is wrong? The world government has captured this moral sentiment of the Navy. It was calculated that the Navy would not really confront them head-on, and would have to give in the end. To a certain extent, this can be regarded as a gentleman deceiving others. Just bully an honest man like the Navy. Seeing that many generals in the Navy were silent, the Warring States general shook his head helplessly. There was nothing he could do about this situation that had lasted for more than 800 years. Not only is he helpless, but Cyborg, the naval marshal, is also helpless, isn't he? If he had a choice, Cyborg wouldn't let this damn King's Shichibukai plan actually be implemented. But a wise general is a wise general after all. After the Warring States general changed his mind, he smiled again and said, "Everyone, there are policies from above and countermeasures from below." Hearing the words of the Warring States general, Senior Staff Officer Ahe's expression suddenly lit up, as if he had thought of something. Garp said directly, "Warring States, if you have anything to say, just say it." When the world government handed over the King's Shichibukai plan to the hands of our Navy, it already demonstrated their determination. We cannot resist the implementation of this plan, but we can exert naval influence on the subsequent operability. The Warring States general laughed. General Ahe also seemed to understand these meanings, and suddenly said, "That's right, the world government wants to find all 7 big pirates in a short period of time and form a fighting force very quickly. Infiltrating new worlds and stuff, this does have advantages, but the disadvantages are even greater, and our Navy can completely delay this pace. The world government wants to formulate this plan within 1 or 2 years, but we delay it for 10 or 20 years, wouldn't it be possible to greatly reduce this harm? Moreover, times are changing. Now it is necessary to conquer the Shichibukai. Maybe in the future, the world government will change its mind," the Warring States general said softly. In fact, the Navy actually did this. The Shichibukai plan was implemented as early as the beginning of the Great Pirate Era, or even earlier, and it was implemented and became a law. But when did the real King Shichibukai gather? Boya and Hancock went to sea, Fisher Tiger burned Mary Joya and formed the Sun Pirates, and they all died. Later. The time span is as long as more than 10 years. Here, there is the reason why the Navy is holding back. It is up to you to implement it. Anyway, our Navy will cause trouble for you overtly and covertly. You said it took such a long time, is it because there is no one to choose? No, there are many suitable candidates in the sea. Every time the world government likes someone, but before it succeeds, the Navy will kill him for you, or find some way to anger them and the world government. Conflicts between the two parties, etc. In short, they are trying their best to mess things up for you. You can't say that the Navy has done anything wrong. After all, those guys haven't become kings yet and are in the Shichibukai. Is it wrong for our Navy to attack pirates? Therefore, although the King's Shichibukai plan was finally implemented very quickly, the time span for actually gathering the King's Shichibukai was extremely slow. This means that there are policies from above and countermeasures from below. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 146. During the construction of the King's Shichibukai plan, in order to avoid direct conflict with the Navy, the world government will intend to establish it as an independent organization directly under the world government. Legally speaking, it is a parallel organization with our Navy headquarters. When the Warring States general said this, he looked a little unhappy. The same goes for the rest of the Navy. If Oshikibukai is a subordinate organization of the Navy, there will be too much room for maneuver. The Navy can try every means to torture these big pirates. It will arrange a job for you today and find trouble for you tomorrow. You have to stop doing it. If you don't do it, I will deprive you of your status as King Shichibukai and turn around to beat you. The world government is not a fool. It naturally expected this situation. It is impossible for the King's Shichibukai plan to get the heartfelt support of the Navy. Therefore, it is necessary to separate the Oshikibukai plan from the Navy, but it cannot be completely eliminated from the Navy, which would be even worse. Power needs checks and balances, and those so-called senior officials are very good at this. However, under special circumstances, the world government will grant our navy the power to override the king's Shishibukai, summon these guys, and fight with us, the warring states general said softly. The rest of the navy also curled their lips, as if they didn't take it seriously. This thing, how should I put it, although it is considered to have restrictive conditions, but whether it can be implemented in the end is still in the hands of the world government. It will only work if it authorizes you. If you don't authorize it, it will be useless. Moreover, how could their navy really cooperate with the pirates? The trust issue here is very serious, so this restriction is ridiculous. Stop talking about this and think about how you can ruin this plan, Garp said unceremoniously. Chief Staff Officer Ahe directly put forward his own ideas. I suggest that fishing boats be used for propaganda, overtly or covertly, to emphasize that joining the Shishibukai Sea means becoming a lackey of the world government and our navy, consultant Ahe said in a deep voice. When the others heard this, their expressions lit up. Yes, those who work on the sea now all want reputation. If you are a great pirate and become a lackey, what about your colleagues? Don't they all laugh at you? Taunt you? There are some arrogant guys. Under such circumstances, even if they have the ability to join the Shishibukai, they would probably refuse because of their bad reputation. In fact, the navy in the future, he would indeed play such a dirty trick, constantly slandering the name of King Shishibukai on the sea, making King Shishibukai notorious in the pirate camp, and being a lackey of the world government and navy. Are all trivial. This stigma, in fact, has no basis. The world government has almost no binding force on the king of the seven kingdoms. First of all, this is a fact. After all, it is directly separated from the seven kingdoms of the king. There are a lot of people in Wukai, and the world government has no intention of recruiting them. In the broad concept, it is an equal deal between the two parties. The world government absolves O Shishibukai of his crimes, and OK Shishibukai does something for the world government. This is reasonable and reasonable. Even now, the world government is also secretly cooperating with some pirates, and it is more superficial to bring out the King Shishibukai. In the future, the world government will even engage in arms deals with Kaido. Can you say that Kaido are they the lackeys of the world government? Obviously not. But in general, perhaps in this regard, it can be said that the Shishibukai are the lackeys of the world government. But to say that they are the lackeys of the navy is completely nonsense. Damn it, there isn't even a theoretical basis. Because the Shishibukai are on the same level as the navy headquarters. The navy headquarters' binding force on them comes entirely from the authorization of the world government, and the world government, basically it won't be authorized. As for the fact that the king's Shishibukai will help the world government attack pirates and so on, this is simply nonsense. Wouldn't it be that without the code of His Majesty Shishibukai, the pirates wouldn't attack each other? The big guys in the New World all want to kill each other, okay. The little pirates below were even more fooling each other. And from the attack between the king's Shishibukai and the pirates, will the world government be the biggest beneficiary in the end? No, it's the king's Kibukai itself. The world government only enjoys some benefits in reputation, and this seems to be enough for them. In the final analysis, the Shishibukai organization is still a pirate force and has connections with the world government, but the involvement is not deep. The two parties are using each other to achieve their respective goals. It is as simple as that. It's just that the Navy carried out many shady operations in order to discredit the Shishibukai and block this plan that was not good for them. The focus is on fishing boat propaganda. All kinds of rumors are spread to slander King Shishibukai, which makes the organization stink and makes no one willing to go. That makes sense, General Zifa said immediately. That's right. First of all, after this decree is implemented, our Navy will mobilize its own power and strive to stigmatize the Shishibukai in the shortest possible time and turn this organization into an organization that is shamed by pirates. In this way it will be able to greatly delay the formation speed of the Kaiwuhei under the king. The Warring States General nodded and said. At that time, if anyone wants to join the 7 Seas of War under the king, we will focus on hitting that target, Sakazuki also said in a deep voice. Find some special pirates to fill this position and reduce the role of the king's Shishibukai as much as possible. Kyuzan suggested after thinking for a while. Later, the Navy actually did this, and Jorikol Mihawk was one of the representative figures. The Navy believed that this guy was basically harmless and very powerful, so hurry up, invite me to come and occupy a trap. Then some random characters were added, such as Moonlight Moria, who had been living in the Devil's Triangle for 10 years without leaving the sea. He was also a trap occupier. In the end, the world government still fought on the top. At that time, through the CP agency and Doflamingo's hand, they drove him out, but they didn't dare to let the Navy get involved. And the Fishman Jinbei, the Navy directly used strengthening against the world government. Because of the cooperation of Fishman Island, a member country, he was included in the king's Shishibukai system. In fact, if it hadn't been for this, Jinbei would have joined the Whitebeard pirates, right? And he's just a pirate. In other words, Jinbei is also a pirate with a very low threat level. Bartholomew Bear, not to mention, was directly used by the Navy for experiments. The pirate Empress Boya Hancock went to sea for the first time. He was invited by the Navy to serve as king in the Shishibukai. Why? Strong. There is this reason, but the deeper reason is because the Amazon Lily pirates are basically harmless. They operate in a fixed area and do not participate. The struggle for maritime supremacy is equivalent to a transparent person. It can be said that the only person truly selected by the world government who has not been messed up by the Navy is Crocodile. And Doflamingo, this guy is trying every means, only then join the king's Shishibukai, for which he did not hesitate to rob the world government's heavenly gold as a threat. Therefore, for a long time afterwards, the Navy continued to stigmatize King Shishibukai, and then used various methods to smear the candidates for King Shishibukai. The world government's powerful plan to split the pirate camp, and even later use it to fight against the 4 emperors, turned into a parallel import. As one of the 3 major forces in the world in name only. Navy Headquarters, One Piece Yonko, and King Shishibukai. Among these 3 units, the Kaiwuhei under the king is the most watery, and the water is endless. In the final analysis, it is because the Navy is constantly holding back the world government, and is constantly trying to find ways to lead the king of the Shishibukai into a trap. In the end, this plan was completely terminated by the future Admiral Fujitora Isho. It can be said that the Navy fought against the world government for nearly 25 years on this plan, and finally won a hard-fought victory. The Warring States General could pat his chest and proudly say, "I'm good at holding back." Marshal Cyborg was stunned at this time. Damn it, didn't I ask you to discuss the filling of the king's Shishibukai plan? Why did you guys suddenly start discussing how to mess up this plan? Did it stink? But I like it, so just do it. This is the righteous Navy. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 147. The New World, on a flying island under Shiji's banner. The island was not peaceful at this time, and the roar of lions could be heard from time to time. Occasionally, you can see 2 slashes flying across the sky, followed by a shockwave or something. That's right, Orgrim was fighting Shishi on this island at this time. Speaking of which, Shiji specially raised this uninhabited island from the sea in order to have a wide enough place to fight Orgrim and others. No way, this Orgrim is okay, it doesn't happen that often. When Mihawk was still there, he basically had to torment Shiji every day. At the beginning, the 2 people's actions could be limited to a certain range. Later, as Mihawk's strength continued to improve, his progress in swordsmanship became more and more obvious. Every time Shiji competed with him, he would break a lot of things. Therefore, Shiji thought about it and built an uninhabited island in one go, specifically to deal with Mihawk, Orgrim, and others. So far, it seems that 4 of the 5 islands have been exploded. But that's all Mihawk's fault, and Orgrim won't take it. The ground was constantly churning, and in just a moment, a huge earth-yellow lion was condensed, and then it rushed towards Orgrim with its teeth and claws. The size of this lion is even larger than that of the giants. Shiji's Piaopio fruit is indeed extremely powerful. It is estimated that if there is no high-end power, this lion alone can destroy an island, right? Orgrim was still dressed as a reckless man at this time. He was casually wearing a pair of black trousers, which were stained with mud and dust. There was a cloth belt tied around his waist, which could be regarded as a belt. His upper body was naked, the muscles on his body were bulging, his arms were wrapped in armed domineering, and he was waving a war hammer in his hand, looking like a barbarian warrior. Facing the huge mud lion charging towards him, Orgrim had nothing to fear. He exerted force under his feet, a shock wave exploded, and his figure went straight towards the lion. As the distance gradually shortened, Orgrim's feet quickly left the ground and began to gallop in the air. This technique is exactly the moon step in the 6th naval style. The heavy warhammer was now like a soft feather in Orgrim's hands, and he could use it dexterously with one hand. He raised the warhammer above his head and kept fiddling with his wrists. The huge warhammer spun on Orgrim's head, like a propeller, breaking the air and making a roaring sound. "Sledgehammer 80, Orgrim shouted in the air. At the same time, the warhammer in his hand was instantly straightened. One hand turned into 2 hands, and he smashed the hammer on the bridge of the huge lion's nose. In the past, Orgrim moved his hand, and the shock wave was released wantonly, exploding directly along the warhammer, destroying everything in sight. But this time, a transparent energy wave quickly wrapped the hammer head of the warhammer, just like the signature ability of the guy with white beard. It condensed and never dispersed. The warhammer condensed with shockwave energy slammed into the huge clay lion. The roaring lion seemed to be frozen here. For a moment, all movements stopped. Then the transparent energy on Orgrim's warhammer was like drizzle, gently immersed into the lion's body. It was too late, but it was so fast. In just a moment, the bridge of the lion's nose shattered and exploded. Then, the huge figure that was several times stronger than the giants collapsed from the inside. With just one blow, Shiji's lion power earth scroll, it was completely shattered by Orgrim. At the same time, Orgrim in the air also discovered Shiji, who was flying behind the huge figure of the lion. There was a long distance between the two, but without any hesitation, he swung the warhammer upwards in his hand, pointed the hammerhead directly at Shiji and shouted in a low voice, "Ningkong Wave Dragon King Sai." The moment Orgrim finished speaking, a white light lit up on the head of the warhammer. The white light was instantly bundled into a white light, like a laser, aimed at Shiji's figure. The next moment, this white light, the laser, burst out. Of course Shiji also noticed this. After seeing this white energy beam, his expression changed slightly, and he had no intention of trying to block it or resist it. His body was very agile. It fluttered for a while and moved away from its original position in an instant. Sure enough, in the next moment, Orgrim's energy beam had already pierced the position where he was just now, and the powerful energy beam instantly pierced the sky. The clouds. A second later, the clouds seemed to undergo drastic changes. An extremely powerful shock wave erupted from the clouds, setting off several waves. The thick clouds that were originally solidified in the sky were instantly destroyed, as if in it was like a big hole opened in the sky. Shiji looked at that scene and felt very emotional in his heart. Damn it, he underestimated this move last time and almost capsized in the hands of Orgrim. Facing Orgrim like this, the ferocious offensive made Shiji a little excited in his heart. It has to be said that Orgrim's strength is indeed growing very fast, faster than he imagined. Originally, in Shiji's view, although Orgrim his talent and talents are great, but it will take at least 3 or 2 years to grow into a first-class master. But now, he is already a stable first-class master. No one can underestimate him on the sea. Next, what Orgrim has to climb is the level of top masters like him, Whitebeard, Roger, Kaido and others, as well as the big guys in the navy. But if he wants to break through to that level within this range of strength, it is not so simple. There are many first-class masters on the sea, but how many can really reach the top? And after reaching the top, the battle between the old and new heroes will be even more, it's extremely dangerous. If you want to defeat the others, you don't know how much effort you have to put in. Orgrim, there is still a long way to go. Shiji's thoughts are a little ethereal, but in fact, in reality, which was just 3 or 2 breaths. But when he came back to his senses, he saw a warhammer breaking through the air, pulling out a harsh whistle, and hitting him at an extremely fast speed. Game over. Shiji didn't have any panic in his heart. He took out the famous deadwood sword from his waist with one hand, and then pointed it out with a very precise point on the roaring warhammer. At that moment, Shiji felt an unparalleled and powerful force coming from the blade in his hand. But it was only for a moment. Shiji had 100 ways to prepare this kind of thing. The tip of the knife touched the warhammer. In an instant, the ability of Shiji's fluttering fruit had invaded the past, so after an instant, all the power on the warhammer was removed by Shiji. But it was not over. In this moment of change, Orgrim's strong figure was already in front of Shiji. His strong arms were wrapped in jet-black armed domineering. When facing Shiji, the master, Orgrim showed no mercy at all. Meaning, hit him directly in the heart. Shiji's movements were not slow, and his other hand was instantly wrapped with armed domineering energy. He blocked it in front of his chest in a parrying posture, and blocked Orgrim's straight punch without any loss. The two powerful armed forces collided instantly, and the shock waves generated by the fierce confrontation exploded from the two of them, spreading one after another. At the same time, the space around the two people was torn apart by the armed and domineering charge, and dark domineering lightning continued to explode around them. Being able to compete with Shiji's domineering force in a short period of time shows how much Orgrim has improved over the past year. When he was on the Chambord Islands, his armed haki would be directly defeated the moment he fought Zifa. However, the masters of haki are all just grinding their time. Perhaps Orgrim's explosiveness and armed haki will not easily lose to these masters, but after all, the time to polish it is not long enough. In terms of durability, it will obviously be much worse. Therefore, Orgrim had no intention of competing with Shiji for domineering power. The moment the armed domineering confrontation broke out, Orgrim's arm came out from his shoulder and a powerful shockwave surged, and it erupted along the fist in the blink of an eye. Got out. Shiji's figure was instantly engulfed by the shockwave, and then he was directly knocked away. I won, Orgrim thought with some surprise. But as soon as this thought appeared, he felt a stinging pain in his abdomen. When he lowered his head and looked down, he saw the famous sword Deadwood that Shiji was holding in his hand just now. It had completely submerged into his stomach. Blood flowed out along the wound and dripped from the air. When, Orgrim didn't notice Shiji's operation at all. Even with his domineering power, he didn't notice it. Gee ha 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 ha, Shiji's figure flew out and laughed. You're a million years too early to win against me. Shiji said with a rebellious smile on his lips. Looking at his figure, apart from his long golden hair and some messy clothes, he didn't seem to be injured. I don't know what means he used to resolve the shockwave just now. Orgrim reluctantly pulled out the famous knife Deadwood stuck in his stomach, and then grinned and said, Boss Shiji, didn't we just agree to this? Friendship first, Competition second. You bastard, from the time you used that Dragon King's Psi, I knew you were not well intentioned, and you still said nothing to me. With your physique, this is enough for me, Shiki cursed with a smile. Orgrim touched his nose in embarrassment. Indeed, since Shiki almost capsized last time, Orgrim just had the intention of playing tricks on him. But obviously, he was seen through by Shiji. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 148. Orgrim returned the famous sword Deadwood to the big boss Shiji, and Shiji also handed the doom hammer to Orgrim. Then Shiji looked at the incision on Orgrim's abdomen and asked, I didn't bring any medical tools. Why don't I go back and bandage them? Orgrim had a smile on his lips and said, No, it just so happens that I have a new skill that I can show you. Shiji raised his eyebrows when he heard this, and asked curiously what skill. Take a good look. Orgrim responded first, then took a deep breath, tensed the muscles in his body, and then shouted in a low voice the secret of the 6 styles, return of life. As Orgrim's words fell, I saw that the wound that was originally bleeding began to change. The blood that flowed out actually began to flow back, and soon returned to Orgrim's wound. Then a neat knife edge it also gradually closed and healed very quickly. In just 3 to 5 breaths, Orgrim's wound completely returned to normal. If there wasn't even a little bit of blood remaining around it, it would be impossible to tell that he had been injured here just now. Injured? Shiji was stunned at this time. He couldn't help but stretched out his hand to touch Orgrim's abdomen, and then said with some surprise, impossible, the secret of the 6 moves, the return of life, it's impossible to do this, it's simply, immortal. Returning life is something that Shiji, who has such a big hand and has always been at odds with the Navy, cannot have never seen before. But in any case, returning life is also a first aid method, and it is impossible to achieve the same level as Austria. At Grimm's level, he could restore a wound that penetrated his abdomen to a state of complete self-healing in minutes. It was amazing to be able to stop the bleeding and ensure that the injury did not worsen. Even if it was more powerful, it could make the injury enter. In the case of pseudo-healing, Orgrim, no matter how you look at it, is completely healed, and there is no false state. But soon, Shiji's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding, and he looked at it in surprise. Orgrim asked, you have that strange physique, right? Return of life with the 6 styles. Orgrim had a smile on his lips, nodded and said, Boss Shiji is so awesome, can you see through it at a glance? After a pause, Orgrim continued, yes, I discovered this when I was practicing the 6th form. I have to say that although the 6th form was created by those bastard Navy, but it is indeed quite amazing. It is worthy of being called the secret technique of superhuman physical skills. The more you practice the 6 postures, the more you can understand and deepen your own body. In the final analysis, the 6 postures allow you to understand yourself deeply and master yourself while strengthening yourself, Shiki continued after Orgrim's words. Yes, understand yourself and master yourself. In the past, although my physique was special and could heal itself quickly after being injured, I have always been unable to control this strange ability. I always let my injuries take their own course, but now, I can vaguely control it, so I can concentrate on some fixed point healing, and cooperate with the effect of life return to reach this step. Orgrim nodded and said. But soon, Orgrim smiled again and said, of course, this kind of thing also consumes my physical strength. As for immortality, that is definitely impossible. But it's totally okay to bluff people. If you're not familiar with it, Boss Shiji, you might be bluffed by me, right? Gee ha 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 ha, that's right, Shiji laughed. Because Orgrim often asked Shiji some questions, and these questions must be answered based on Orgrim's level and individual cases. Therefore, Shiji's opinion of the current Orgrim, it can be said that he knows Orgrim quite well. Therefore, he can react to what is going on with Orgrim. But if it is someone who is not familiar with Orgrim, then when he is playing, he suddenly how shocked was he to discover that Orgrim's injuries could be recovered in the blink of an eye. No matter how you thought about it, you would think of it as an effect like immortality, and even the will to fight would plummet, and you would destroy yourself. Got it? When they were under rocks, Lingling and Kaido were called monsters by many of our crew members in terms of physical fitness. As you know, Lingling was born with great strength, even the giants were inferior to her, and her defense power was, it is beyond imagination, known as the steel balloon. Kaido's guy has amazing vitality, and we jokingly call him the immortal body. Now in the sea, there are only two of them who dominate in the field of physical fitness. Even I, Roger, and Whitebeard can't. I don't want to be inferior in this regard, but now it seems that in the future, you can also compete with them in this regard. Shiji said with some emotion. Does Shiji envy the physical fitness of Charlotte, Lingling and Kaido? He must be envious. There is no one in the sea who doesn't envy them, even if they call them monsters. Think about Roger. If he had Kaido's vitality, he would definitely not have any terminal disease. I don't know how many years he would live, and I don't know what he could do to the sea. Think about it again. That guy with the beard, if he had the physical fitness of Charlotte Lingling, and matched his strength in the top battle, he would probably be able to beat the shit out of the Navy headquarters. He's the kind of guy who doesn't beat the shit out of the Navy headquarters. The kind that the Navy headquarters can clean up. The same is naturally true for Shiji. He reached out and touched his head. Although he did not speak, Orgrim also understood that he was envious. If he had such a physique, you can completely take off the rudder on your head. Seeing that Shiji seemed a little hurt by the situation, Orgrim did not continue to show off his physique. Instead, he asked, I usually go to find him, Boss Shiji, please discuss and understand your situation. Why did you come to see me today? What troubles have you encountered recently and you want to take it out on me? Shiji calmed down after hearing this, glanced at Orgrim angrily and said, who do you think I am? Would you be so petty? Taking it out on you. Ha 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 ha, what's the reason? Orgrim laughed and asked. Shiski smacked his lips and said, I came to see how far you have come, and I have some things I want to do recently to see if you are qualified. Looking at it now, it should be enough, I want to show off. Orgrim was a little surprised. He didn't understand what Shiji meant at all. So he frowned slightly and said, what do you mean? Shiji took out 2 cigars from his arms and handed one to Orgrim. Both of them lit it up naturally and started smoking. It seems that Shiji has become accustomed to cigars in the past year or so. Grim, the bastard, is no longer big or small. Slowly exhaling a puff of smoke, Shiji said softly, not long ago, that guy Roger had a fight with Newgate. You should got it? Orgrim nodded and said, of course I know. Although this matter has not been published in the newspapers, there are some gossips and intelligence circulating among the major forces. Orgrim also heard from Beckman. In that battle, although there was news that there was no winner, Roger finally stole one of Newgate's crew members, named Kojiki Odin, Shiki said softly. Orgrim still nodded. Shiji then continued, last year, Roger. At this point, Shiji's expression was a little tangled, but he quickly shook his head and said, Roger defeated me and stole Newgate's crew this year. Now on the sea, he is the most popular and seems to overwhelm everyone after Newgate and I. Although everyone knew that Shiji was defeated by storm in the Battle of Adver, everyone recognized one truth, that is, luck was also a part of strength. In the final analysis, Shiji did lose that battle, and the winner was naturally Roger. As for Newgate, Orgrim knew very well that it was Roger who knelt down and begged Newgate to give Kojiki Odin to him, and Kojiki Odin himself also persuaded Newgate. Only then did he make an exception. But no one in the sea knew about this. It was impossible for anyone to believe that Roger would kneel down and ask Newgate for anything. After all, Roger is one of the top pirates. It is impossible for anyone to believe that Newgate would give up his family to Roger just because Roger asked him to. After all, everyone in the sea knows how stubborn and defensive Newgate is in this regard. But, in fact, Roger ran away with Kojiki Odin, and Newgate didn't even fart. What does this make people on the sea think? He must have guessed that Newgate suffered a loss in the battle with Roger. From this point of view, the only person who can defeat Shiji and Newgate is Roger. In fact, this was one of the main reasons why Roger was later recognized by the world as the Pirate King as soon as he found Ralph Drew. Because Roger's record was so awesome, among the three top pirates, he defeated Shiji and robbed Whitebeard's crew, becoming the final winner. Now, he has found Ralph Drew again, so shouldn't everyone respectfully call him Pirate King? As for the various misunderstandings here, there is no solution. After all, they have been covered up under the torrent of history. Thinking of this, Orgrim probably guessed what Shiji meant, so he asks, "So, Boss Shiji, do you want to have another fight with Roger?" Shiji was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Why is Roger so easy to find? A duel was under special circumstances that time. I mean, when we go to fight Newgate, we don't want to destroy the Whitebeard pirates. We just need to overwhelm them. In this way, next time I meet Roger, as long as I kill him or defeat him, everything will be easy." Orgrim was stunned at this time. "What the hell are you thinking? I can't keep up." But soon, he understood something. It turned out that Shiji felt that his position as the pirate overlord had been shaken by Roger, so did he need to do something to stabilize his position? Thinking about it this way, there seems to be no problem. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 149. Roger was hard to find, and Shiki couldn't find him. But Newgate has now returned to his territory. He has not been active recently, and his target is relatively fixed. Shiji can cause trouble for him. Looking at it now, both Shiki and Newgate suffered at the hands of Roger. Then Roger was standing on top of both of them. Newgate didn't care much. He had no intention of competing for the hegemony of the sea. It was just that with his strength, he became a big mountain. But Shiji was very concerned about it. He felt that since Roger had stepped on both of them now, he, Shiji, had to find his place again. If you can't find Roger, go get Newgate. As long as Newgate is suppressed, Shiji can temporarily stabilize the situation. Among the three great pirates, he can be the second most powerful pirate. In addition, the world's perception that Shiji is not as lucky as Roger, and Shiji's prestige for so many years, his position as the pirate overlord will be much more stable. Next, as long as Shiji finds Roger and tidies him up, Shiji will be stable. When the time comes, once the big plan is launched, Shiji holds the artificial ancient weapon and sweeps the world. Does it seem that there is nothing wrong with achieving hegemony? Orgrim was also very curious about Newgate. He has been at sea for so long, Roger has met him, fought against almost all the big guys in the navy, and even became Shiji's disciple. The only thing is that he has never had any interaction with Newgate. Now, Shiji, the big brother, wants to take him to the Newgate dungeon to increase his experience and so on. Orgrim has no reason to refuse. As for whether he can really defeat Newgate or something, Orgrim doesn't care at all. That is Shiji's business, and Shiji is the one who makes the decision. As long as he doesn't let go, no matter what the result is in the end, he will do it anyway. Orgrim is not at a loss. As for whether he will fall off the chain, although he doesn't know what Shiji's thoughts are, Orgrim is confident enough in himself. If you don't even have the courage to challenge Newgate, why are you a pirate? Moreover, didn't Orgrim go to sea to compete with the heroes of the world? Let him be the first. In addition, Orgrim is now more confident in his own strength. After such a period of time, it is time to go out and show off, so he also has a restless heart. So after listening to Shiji's words, Orgrim patted his chest without hesitation and said, "Boss Shiji, you just have to make the decision. Don't look at me as a carefree person, but I respect you in my heart. I, Orgrim, am now a member of the Golden Lion Fleet. I am your subordinate, Admiral. I will fight whoever you say you want to fight. Even if you say you want to attack Marine Headquarters Marineford, Orgrim, I am also willing to be your vanguard to get the head of the Warring States. Dog." There is no doubt that Orgrim took the opportunity to increase Shiji's favorability. Of course Shiji is also very fond of this trick. Orgrim is a bastard who usually seems to be neither big nor small. Although Shiji doesn't say it with his mouth and feels normal mentally, he still has some pride and vanity. Now Orgrim is acting like you, Boss Shiji, have the final say on such critical matters. Shiji believed it or not, but after hearing this, he felt very comfortable. It's not in vain that I have put so much effort into cultivating you. I can take care of you with all my strength. Even though you, a bastard, are as good as 2,580,000 yuan on weekdays, you are still very reliable at critical moments. Yes, I like it. Very good, Orgrim, you are worthy of being my disciple of Shiji. Shiji laughed and said, the corners of his mouth almost split, and he patted Orgrim on the shoulder with satisfaction. Orgrim also smiled, and then asked, "Then Boss Shiji, what are we going to do now? Arrange. Depart directly? Am I a pioneer? Go and help you blow Newgate's head off?" Shiji couldn't help but feel a bit of toothache after listening to Orgrim's confident words. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Although your kid has made great progress, you can be considered the number one person on the sea, but there is still a big gap between us and Newgate. It's not that simple to beat him. Even I don't dare to say such things as a sure win." Orgrim smiled slightly awkwardly, but did not refute anything. After all, Newgate has been rampant all over the world for so many years, and he has fought against countless masters, such as the Crucian carp crossing the river. Orgrim has only been at sea for a long time, so why? Maybe hit him. But you still have to say harsh words. What do you mean, Boss Shiji? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Let's go find trouble with Newgate. I'm here to put pressure on Newgate so that Newgate doesn't dare to act rashly. You, boy, are responsible for taking care of his so-called sons. In this way, even if Newgate and I don't fight, we will be able to defeat him in the end. If we do, I can't say that I can definitely win against Newgate, but I won't lose either, Shiji said very grandly. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then said, so this important task is placed on me. As long as I perform well here, in the end, it doesn't matter whether you and Newgate fight or not. We all won. That's right. So you have to give me a voice, don't embarrass me, don't forget, you are my Golden Lion's disciple. How could he lose to Newgate's son? Shiki said very arrogantly. Orgrim nodded. Although he did not have the confidence to win against Newgate, if he fought against Newgate's son, Orgrim felt that he was no better than that man. Why are people like Marco and Josa so bad? Leave it to me, and I'll blow their heads off with a hammer. Orgrim patted his chest and said. Thinking of causing trouble with Newgate's Whitebeard pirates, Orgrim was a little excited now and couldn't wait to ask. I know the general thing, then shall we leave now? G was stunned for a moment, then waved his hand and said, it's not that simple. I have to arrange some other things. Just wait for 2 days. Don't relax during these 2 days. Look for your own problems and strive for them, become stronger. Just wait 2 days, just wait 2 days. Orgrim has been at home for a year, and he is not an impatient person. So he quickly nodded to express his understanding. Shiji didn't say anything else to him after that. The two of them left the island together and returned to the palace. Shiki went to arrange some things. After Orgrim said goodbye to him, he wandered around the palace alone, preparing to return to his residence and rest. Walking in the corridors of Shiji's palace, from time to time you will see Shiji's servants busy here. After seeing Orgrim, those guys will bow their heads very respectfully and call Orgrim Lord Mew. Occasionally, some guys would call Orgrim Master or something like that. Although Orgrim was very impatient with this title, he did not make things difficult for these servants and just pretended not to hear. Just like this, when I walked around a corner, I saw a sturdy figure walking towards me. Then the figure was stunned for a moment, and Orgrim also stopped, with a slight smile on his lips. Rengar, his injuries have long been healed. Over the past year, since Orgrim has rarely shown up, he has not seen Orgrim. Of course, after being defeated by Stormhammer a year ago, Rengar he no longer had any trouble with the members of the Warhammer Pirates. At this time, he did not expect to meet Orgrim here, and he felt a little embarrassed, but soon, he seemed to have mustered up the courage, and almost he walked up to Orgrim in a few steps. Orgrim raised his eyebrows, wondering if this bastard was going to provoke me again. As a result, Rengar said in a very serious tone, Orgrim, grown-ups, I have never been able to apologize to you. I am sorry for my provocation and ignorance a year ago. Orgrim's expression was a little surprised. In his opinion, Rengar should be that kind of reckless player, very arrogant. A year ago, after he beat him and won, what did he think he could do to subdue him, but this guy didn't make any movement at all afterwards. Orgrim thought he was dissatisfied with himself or something, and was looking for an opportunity to cause trouble, so he ignored him. But he met him today. Okay, this guy actually bowed his head and admitted his mistake. Anyway, it wasn't a big contradiction, and Orgrim was still the winner. He didn't lose anything, but gained a wave of prestige, so he didn't have to be petty to care about anything. It's just that seeing the smile on Orgrim's lips, he patted Rengar's shoulder very naturally and said, it's nothing, just communicating with each other. We all work for Boss Shiji. There is nothing that you can't get through. Don't worry about it anymore. Rengar didn't expect Orgrim to be so easy to talk to. After all, he didn't know Orgrim very well, but judging from Orgrim's past reputation, he was an out-and-out villain. Still a very evil one. Look at that evil skull crusher, enemy of mankind or something like that. Is that a title that a serious person would have? In other words, the current lion disciples look a bit normal, right? Thank you, Lord Orgrim, for your understanding, Rengar said with a slight smile on his lips. Well, there may be some big action in the next few days, so show up well. Orgrim said with a smile. Then he had no intention of saying anything more to Rengar. He nodded to him and left. Rengar turned around and watched Orgrim walking further and further away. I don't know what I was thinking about in my back. Finally, I shook my head and smiled a little self-deprecatingly, and left here. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 150. A year ago, while in the waters of Adver, Shiji's flagship sank directly in that sea. Later, he returned to his home base on Orgrim's deep-sea overlord Black Unicorn. In this year, Shiji has built a new flagship. It is still so majestic and domineering, with golden lion heads hanging on the horns, and the entire ship is also very huge, no less than the large warships of the Navy headquarters. This time, Shiji didn't make any big noise, nor did he summon his fleet. Just like that, a flagship set off. After all, he went there with the intention of having a friendly exchange with Newgate, not to start a war. Orgrim and others were on the ship at this time, but their deep-sea overlord, the Black Narwhal, was not dispatched. Speaking of which, Orgrim rarely rode on Shiji's ship. After all, their Warhammer pirates are not members of the Shiji group in the true sense. They belong to Shiji's large fleet. But due to the special nature of Orgrim, the Warhammer pirates also have very special treatment under Shiji. Under normal circumstances, Shiji only gives benefits to members of his own group, such as bailies, wine, women, etc. The other independent captains of the large fleet all go out on their own. Whatever they want, they can grab it themselves. Shiji won't care about it anyway. This is also a normal phenomenon. After all, Shiji has already given his name to them. This is enough benefit, and there is no need to give the rest. On the contrary, those independent captains under the large fleet are required to pay tribute to Shiji every year as a price for their ability to use the Shiji flag. This seemingly unfair treatment was not problematic at all. Countless people on the sea flocked to Shiji's banner. In this way, Shiji has to select the best among them, and he doesn't look down on the ordinary garbage. Among so many independent captains, only Orgrim's Warhammer pirates receive Shiki's benefits. Every time Shiki gives out benefits to members of the group, the Warhammer pirates are included. Because of this, the Warhammer pirates seem to be even more special under Shiji's banner. Of course, no one dared to question Shiji's decision. After all, this was not a pearl country. Shiji was undoubtedly the dictator. He was the king with the banner of the golden lion. Shiji was sitting on the throne in the cabin, with no intention of coming out to see the scenery. On the contrary, Orgrim and others were active on the deck. Orgrim was leaning on the edge of the fence and sitting on the deck very casually. He had a cigar in his hand and was about to light it. Beckman wandered over, also holding a cigarette between his teeth, and threw a box of matches to Orgrim. "You still need to use matches, instead of a more handsome lighter or something?" Orgrim asked as he took the match with a smile. "You don't understand, whether it's a cigarette or a cigar, only matches can truly ignite this meaning." Beckman sat on the deck next to Orgrim and leaned against the fence. "What you said, isn't it just showing off? If you ask me, flint and steel still tastes good enough." Orgrim laughed and cursed. "You uneducated guy," Beckman sneered. "You are so damn educated, tell me, which school did you graduate from?" Orgrim glared at Beckman and said. "I am self-taught," Beckman said unceremoniously. "Not a wild kid?" Orgrim mocked. Then they both laughed again. "You said we were going to Newgate this time. If that guy Mihawk knew about it, would he regret it?" Beckman asked with a smile. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed and said, "Gee ha 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 ha, that's his own problem, he didn't make it in time. I have always had a question in my mind, is Newgate considered a great swordsman?" Beckman raised his eyebrows and asked. Orgrim touched his chin, then frowned and said, "Doesn't it count? But isn't the Kongyunki in his hand a famous sword that ranks among the top 12 craftsmen?" "How do you say this?" Beckman asked after thinking for a while. Orgrim hesitated for a moment, and then said, "However, Newgate has never been famous for his Kongyunki. He has always used the shocking fruit to destroy. He is the strongest swordsman in the world, and his name is not the strongest swordsman, but the strongest man. But as for Boss Shiji, isn't it also because of his top-notch superhuman ability like the Piao Piao fruit that he has become popular all over the world? His title is still the Pirate Overlord." "Why does everyone think he is a swordsman?" Beckman asked again. Orgrim thought for a while and couldn't figure out the reason, so he said impatiently, "What are you asking me for? Isn't this a question Mihawk should answer? I'm a sledgehammer, I don't care about the damn swordsman's business. When you meet Newgate, you can ask him yourself." "Ha ha 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 ha, you bastard, you are still so impatient," Beckman laughed. While talking, Beckman saw Rengar standing on the other side of the deck, and then asked, "These days, there is something wrong with that Rengar. He always feels like he is working with us in the Warhammer Sea. The thieves are very close to each other. The day before yesterday, he invited me and Gangplank to have a drink." "Ah, why didn't you call me?" Orgrim asked in surprise. Don't you take me with you when you drink now? I'm the captain. I'm your hammer, okay. Beckman was stunned for a moment. Is this the focus of your attention? Is this what I am telling you? But soon, Orgrim smiled again and said, I met him once that day. What did this guy say? Well, you always apologized to me and gave in. Now that you are getting close to us, you must be impressed by my handsome figure? Beckman glanced at Orgrim with some disgust and said, where do you get the confidence to say you are handsome? Isn't this handsome enough? Every time I go to some island, town, or port, don't all the young and old girls exclaim when they see me? Doesn't this prove that I'm handsome? Orgrim said with a serious face. Yes, you are really handsome, exclaiming, here comes the big pirate, help, evil skull crusher, enemy of mankind, and so on. Beckman unceremoniously revealed the truth. You don't care what the hell you shout, anyway, these big girls and little girls exclaim every time they see me, they are so excited that they even get their skirts wet. Isn't this proof? You know shit. Orgrim argued. Then he was so frightened that he peed and became incontinent. Okay. It's different whether it's wet or not. The principles are different. Are you so shameless? Beckman said very speechlessly. Just when Orgrim was about to struggle a few more times, Neiman and Sphinx came over and asked very curiously, what are you two talking about? Orgrim and Beckman's faces turned red. We are driving, do we have to tell you? Ahem, it's nothing, we are discussing something, what's wrong? Didn't you two go have dessert? Orgrim quickly changed the subject. Sphinx waved his hand and said, that guy Daipen ate all the desserts by himself. It's really. But soon, Sphinx sat down next to Orgrim very excitedly and asked, by the way, Mr. Hammer, I heard from Boss Shiji that you will be the protagonist this time. Gee ha 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 ha, Orgrim was very happy to hear the little Lolita Sphinx calling him Hammer. He reached out and tugged on her ponytail and laughed. Don't mess with my hair. Do you want to take a shot? The Sphinx opened Orgrim's hand in dissatisfaction and said. Hey, isn't the steering wheel just for people to grab? Orgrim said disdainfully at first, and Sphinx didn't understand what he meant. Before Sphinx could ask, Orgrim laughed and said, yes, this time it's me. As the protagonist, Boss Shiji will take charge of the battle, and I will take the lead to challenge the Whitebeard pirates. You're going to fight Newgate? Challenge him, the Sphinx asked excitedly. I'm so envious. I want to shoot Newgate twice too. I do want to do something to him. Orgrim nodded and said. Although Shiski meant to take care of Newgate's sons, they have all met Newgate, the strongest man. How could Orgrim be indifferent? No matter. If he can't beat him, he must take action. Otherwise. Wouldn't it be a pity? Thinking of this, Orgrim became a little excited and whispered softly, the strongest man in the world, even Shiji boss dare not say it is safe, the guy who wins, the blood in my body is surging when I think of fighting him. Brother, are you confident that you can beat him? Neiman asked very curiously. As soon as he finished speaking, Beckman laughed and said, if he can beat Newgate, I, Beckman, stand on my head and pull the venom. Niangzapai, just say this to you, I will fight with him. Orgrim cursed. But soon, he laughed again, waved his hand and said, it's not a matter of winning or not, but, there is a mountain there, and everyone has reached the foot of the mountain. How could they not try to climb it? I want to see it too, the gap between me and the strongest in the world. How can he be so powerful? Is he really the strongest in the world? If you are the strongest, why haven't you seen Boss Shiji admit it? Not long ago, wasn't he robbed of a crew member by Roger? The Sphinx smacked her lips with disdain. In her opinion, even if there really is a so-called strongest man, it should be her own admiral. Ha 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 ha, Orgrim smiled and made no excuses. In fact, although Newgate now has the title of the strongest man, there are still many people who disagree with him, and his reputation is not as high as it will be in the future. When Roger died and Shiki had not left the mountain for 20 years, that era was Newgate's era, and he truly became recognized as the strongest man on the sea.